the death of Rolf Harris. Now, I grew up, in fact, most of my life, Rolf Harris was a much-loved entertainer. He was on the TV all the time. We knew his songs, Tie Me Kangaroo Down and all of that. And he was rated as a celebrated artist. He was allowed to paint a portrait of the Queen, for goodness, which still hangs in Buckingham Palace. He was a CBE. Well, after he was charged with and convicted in 2014 of sexual assaults on underage girls, the youngest being just 7 years old, and a string of other allegations are being made against him. Well, it was a big fall from grace. Like yesterday, we learned that he has died, aged 93, of cancer. The news, though, was kept secret by his family for almost 2 weeks, until after his cremation. Let's talk about this with Jo Hemmings. He's a behavioural psychologist. Good morning to you, Jo.
Morning, Julian.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lots of people calling, disgraced entertainer, paedophile, Rolf Harris. That is how we are going to remember him. A man who, like Jimmy Savile, used his celebrity, used his fame, used his reputation as a all-round good, jolly Aussie bloke, used that to gain the access to and to gain the trust of teenagers and young girls down to the age of 7 that we know about. His legacy is completely destroyed, isn't it? But very, very difficult perhaps for a lot of us to, come to terms with sort of much loved figures from our childhood who we now, well, despise and hate and hold in contempt.
Yes, there are quite a few during that era, unfortunately.
Pretty much everyone on the telly.
Pretty much everyone on the telly or the radio, indeed. Yeah, look, I think as soon as we discovered what was going on, and it was a sort of fairly slow unravelling, as it often is, we had to shift what we thought about that person. But for those victims today, on his death, there will be mixed emotions of absolute joy and relief, a bit of triggering, I think, of either dealt with processed emotions that they may have had therapy or counselling for, and a lot of what they thought were buried feelings coming back to the surface. There's also a great deal of resentment. He managed to live to 93. I mean, it's a ripe old age.
Yeah.
Why on earth, actually, just going back to something you said earlier, is his picture of the Queen still hanging in Buckingham Palace?
I believe it's. Maybe they have taken it down. They probably have sensibly taken it down.
That just seems very shocking in itself. But yeah, we've had to, and we had to pivot during that era. As you say, I also grew up with these people being my icons, my idols, people I really respected and loved, suddenly one after the other being quite different human beings to the one that I could have ever expected or anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, isn't it? We've seen icon after icon whose reputations have been destroyed, and we found out the truth behind him. And it does make it really hard, doesn't it, sort of to trust a lot of the people. And you hear, and again, look, there's rumour upon rumour ripping around about it, all manner of people who are in the public eye, I mean, frankly, every day of the week about pretty much every celebrity. And frankly, and you can't always trust everything you read on Tinterweb. I like to warn everybody. But again, we know with these people, again and again, with paedophiles, and Jimmy Savile was the same, although, again, many people had concerns about him, and indeed many people raised concerns about him, and nothing was done, and there are really big issues there. But the key thing about these people go, oh, he was really nice. Now, I met Rolf Harris at some charity event many, many years ago, got a happy photo with him with a mate of mine, and then I did Have I Got News for You with him, the BBC One sort of comedy show. I went to knock on his door, which was next to mine, the dressing room, big hug. He was great fun on the show. He paid his didgeridoo. It was all really, really funny. He was very amusing. We all laughed. The audience absolutely loved it. Got big photos with him. And the thing about a lot of people who do abuse children, who use it, they, like those who go to work in, as priests or work as teachers or work in care homes, or in the celebrities, they deliberately cultivate an image, a manner that everyone thinks that they're nice, they're trustworthy, and that's how they gain access to these children.
Exactly. It's their very niceness, and big inverted commas, that enables them to get that access and to behave in the way that they did. And I suppose the one good takeaway out of all this is that, yes, we may be a bit more suspicious, but I can't imagine this situation happening again. People are now willing to come forward. Victims come forward in a way that they never did back in the past. I think, again, we're living in an era where you kind of didn't like it at all. You just thought, well, it happened, and I don't know who to tell. No,
and you were told to keep quiet. Oh, I mean, again, I remember when Jimmy Savile died, and people were saying, "Oh, why didn't we know this?" I mean, I was bowled over by the number of people. And we had people phoning into the radio station I was working on at the time, telling us, but I raised this. He used to walk around the wards at night in this hospital, and we'd tell the children to pretend to be asleep so he wouldn't fiddle with them. I mean, people knew, and they covered it up. I wonder how many people knew about Rolf Harris and covered it up because it just wasn't in their interest to say anything.
Yeah, look, he was a popular character. He was a money spinner for people. He was always on TV. Yeah, I suspect there was a degree of cover-up going on, which I now feel, that awful era of that kind of cover-up has ended, because people will now come forward with their stories. And if that's our biggest takeaway of this sort of situation, that's a good thing. Yeah, in this, what was it, the 70s? It was a shocker. It was one after the other were revealed.
Wasn't it? I mean, you basically just sort of assumed everyone was, which is, again, really difficult for those people. Can I ask you just one final question? His wife is now widow, stood by him. They lived together in their house in Bray in Berkshire. His daughter we're seeing footage right now of his daughter was at the court with him by his side. We understand has now changed her name and had disowned him after the court case and the conviction. One of the girls he was accused of abusing was actually one of her best friends in the same room where they were both sleeping. That was one of the accusations made against him. But it is often the norm, isn't it, that families, particularly wives and children, stand by someone not just accused but even convicted of these crimes.
They do, and it's a very strange emotion to imagine having, because I think we all believe that if we were in that situation, we would want nothing more to do with them. We'd feel equal disgust. But they do stand by them, and there is that sort of, they will excuse them in some way. There's that unconditional love, if you like, that manages to go that far, that says there must have been a reason why, you didn't mean it, whatever it is. Yeah, it's shocking, but we see it a lot.
Indeed. Well, Jo Hemmings, behavioural psychologist, thank you so much for joining us. 8:46 is the time. Very